What happens when a seemingly routine celebrity interview turns into a career-defining moment that nobody saw coming? Today, we're diving into the explosive confrontation between Chris Stapleton and Jennifer Hudson that left audiences speechless and the music industry buzzing. The Jennifer Hudson show was having one of its biggest weeks yet, with Chris Stapleton scheduled as the featured guest to promote his latest album. What should have been a routine promotional interview quickly spiraled into something unprecedented. Chris Stapleton, welcome to the show, Jennifer Hudson said with her signature warm smile. Thanks for having me, Jennifer. Always a pleasure to be here, Stapleton replied, his distinctive Kentucky drawl immediately recognizable. The first few minutes went as planned, with Hudson asking about his new album. It's about family, about loss, about finding your way when the world seems to be falling apart around you, Stapleton explained. That's beautiful, Hudson responded. And speaking of personal experiences, I know you've been very vocal about keeping your private life private, but there have been some rumors circulating about your recent charitable work, specifically with veteran organizations. Stapleton's expression shifted. I prefer to let the music speak for itself, Jennifer. When I do charitable work, it's not for publicity, of course, Hudson said, with a slight edge to her voice. But surely you understand that your platform gives you an opportunity to shine light on important causes. Some people might say that staying silent is almost irresponsible. The studio audience sensed a change in the atmosphere. I think there's a difference between being irresponsible and being authentic. I don't do things for cameras. But Chris, isn't that exactly the kind of thinking that keeps important issues in the shadows? Hudson pressed. I mean, look at what happened with the recent controversy surrounding country music's relationship with social justice movements. I'm sorry, what controversy are you referring to? Stapleton asked, his tone noticeably cooler. Come on, Chris, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The industry has been criticized for being slow to embrace change, slow to speak out on important social issues, and artists like yourself, who have such influence, choosing to remain silent. It sends a message. Stapleton leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. Jennifer, with all due respect, I came here to talk about music. I came here to talk about art. I didn't come here to be lectured about my supposed responsibilities to causes I may or may not support. The tension in the studio was palpable. Hudson's producer made a subtle hand gesture, but Hudson pressed on. But that's just it, Chris. Art and social responsibility go hand in hand. Look at your own songs. They tell stories of struggle, of hardship. How is that different from using your platform to address real-world struggles? Because, Stapleton said, his voice rising slightly, when I write a song, I'm sharing something real, something I've lived or witnessed. I'm not being told what to think or what to say by a talk show host who thinks she knows what's best for me and my career. The studio audience was completely silent. Hudson's eyes flashed with something between surprise and anger. Excuse me? You heard me, Stapleton continued. I've been doing this for 20 years, Jennifer. I've written songs that have touched millions of people. And you're sitting here telling me I'm irresponsible because I don't tweet about every political issue or show up at every charity event with cameras rolling. Hudson sat back in her chair, clearly taken aback. Chris, I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to say here. No, I understand perfectly, Stapleton replied. You invited me here under the pretense of promoting my album, but what you really wanted was to ambush me with some social justice lecture. You wanted me to either fall in line with your agenda or look bad on national television. That's not what this is about, Hudson shot back, her own voice rising. This is about artists taking responsibility for their influence. My responsibility, Stapleton said, standing up from his chair, is to my family, to my fans, and to the music, not to whatever cause is trending this week. The camera operators weren't sure where to focus. Hudson remained seated, but her composure was clearly shaken. Chris, please sit down. Let's talk about this like adults. Like adults? Stapleton laughed bitterly. Adults don't ambush their guests. Adults don't use their platform to bully people into taking political stances. Hudson stood up as well. Chris, nobody is bullying you. I'm asking legitimate questions that your fans deserve answers to. My fans, Stapleton said, his voice steady but filled with controlled anger, deserve my music. They deserve authenticity. They don't deserve to have their favorite artist turned into some political puppet because a talk show host thinks she knows better. Political puppet? Hudson's voice cracked slightly. Chris, caring about social issues isn't being a political puppet. It's being human. Don't lecture me about being human, Stapleton fired back. I've lived in small towns where people are struggling to put food on the table. I've written songs about real pain, real loss. I don't need to virtue signal on social media to prove I care about people. The studio audience was completely frozen. Hudson took a deep breath, trying to regain control. Chris, I think we're getting off track here. Let's just take a step back and— No, Stapleton interrupted. Let's not take a step back. Let's talk about what's really happening here. You brought me on your show, and instead of celebrating music, instead of talking about art, you decided to turn this into some kind of political interrogation. It wasn't an interrogation, Hudson protested. I asked you about your charitable work. That's a normal interview question. No, Jennifer. A normal interview question would be asking about my creative process. What you did was set up a trap, and when I didn't fall into it, you doubled down. Hudson's producer was now making more urgent hand signals, but Hudson seemed determined to continue. Chris, I have to ask, is this how you react every time someone challenges you to think beyond your comfort zone? Stapleton laughed, but there was no humor in it. Comfort zone? Jennifer, you don't know anything about my comfort zone. You don't know what I've been through, what I've seen, what I've overcome to get here, and you certainly don't know what causes I support or don't support in my private life. Then why not share that with your fans? Hudson pressed. Why not use your influence for good? Because, Stapleton said, his voice rising again, the moment I start talking about politics, the moment I start picking sides, half my fans stop hearing the music. They start hearing an agenda, and music, real music, is supposed to bring people together, not divide them. But silence in the face of injustice is complicity, Hudson countered, clearly not backing down. Silence? Stapleton's eyes flashed. You think I'm silent? Every song I write, every note I sing, every show I play is me speaking. Just because I don't do it on your terms doesn't mean I'm silent. Hudson shook her head. Chris, that's not enough anymore. Artists today have a responsibility to speak out. According to who? Stapleton demanded. According to talk show hosts, according to social media, according to people who have never written a song in their lives but think they can tell artists what their responsibility is. According to basic human decency, Hudson shot back, her composure finally cracking completely. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Stapleton stared at Hudson for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras humming. Basic human decency, Stapleton repeated slowly. So you're saying that because I won't play your game? Because I won't dance to your tune? I lack basic human decency? Hudson seemed to realize she had crossed a line. Chris, that's not what I meant. No, I think that's exactly what you meant, Stapleton said, his voice now dangerously quiet. I think you brought me here, thinking you could shame me into saying what you wanted me to say. And when that didn't work, you decided to question my character. The final straw, Stapleton's southern accent became thicker as his anger increased. You know what the real problem is here? He continued. The real problem is that people like you think art should serve your agenda. You think musicians should be activists first and artists second? I never said that, Hudson protested weakly. You didn't have to, Stapleton replied. It's been implied in every question you've asked. You want me to be Chris Stapleton, the political activist, not Chris Stapleton, the musician. Hudson tried one more time to salvage the interview. Chris, all I'm saying is that with great platform comes great responsibility. Don't quote Spider-Man at me, Jennifer, Stapleton said. My responsibility is to write honest songs and perform them with integrity. Everything else is between me and God. The mention of God seemed to strike another nerve with Hudson. Chris, bringing religion into this is just another way to avoid taking a stand on real issues. Stapleton's expression changed completely. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with something deeper and more personal. Hiding behind faith, he said. his voice barely above a whisper. "Jennifer, you just crossed a line you don't even know exists." Hudson's face went pale. "Chris, I didn't mean to offend your religious beliefs, but nothing," Stapleton cut her off. "You just told a man who lost his father last year, who's been through hell and back, who finds strength in his faith to get through each day, that he's hiding behind that faith. You just told a man whose faith helped him overcome addiction, whose faith keeps his family together, that it's just an excuse." She clearly hadn't known about Stapleton's personal struggles or recent loss. "Chris, I didn't know about your father. I'm sorry." "Of course you didn't know," Stapleton said, his voice filled with bitter disappointment. "Because you didn't bother to do your homework," Stapleton said, his voice now filled with bitter disappointment. "You were too busy preparing your gotcha questions to actually learn anything about your guest." "That's not fair," Hudson said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Fair?" Stapleton laughed harshly. "You want to talk about fair? What's fair is when a talk show host does basic research about their guest before ambushing them on national television. What's fair is when someone respects the fact that people have different ways of making a difference in the world." Hudson looked around the studio desperately, seeking help from her team, but everyone seemed frozen in place. "Chris, can we please just start over? Let's talk about your music." "Now you want to talk about my music?" Stapleton shook his head in disbelief. "After you've questioned my character, my faith, my integrity, now you want to go back to the music?" "Yes, please. That's why you're here." "No, Jennifer, that's why I was supposed to be here. But instead, I got ambushed by someone who thinks she knows how I should live my life, how I should use my voice, what causes I should support, and how I should express my faith." The silence in the studio was deafening. Hudson opened her mouth to speak, but Stapleton held up his hand. "You know what the saddest part of all this is?" Stapleton continued. "I actually respected you before I came here today. I thought you were a genuine person, someone who understood the power of music to heal people. But instead, you're just another person trying to use your platform to force people into boxes they don't belong in." "Chris, that's not who I am," Hudson said, her voice barely audible. "Maybe it's not who you used to be," Stapleton replied, "but it's who you chose to be today. And I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who doesn't even know me about how I should live my life." Hudson made one final desperate attempt to save the interview. "Chris, please don't let this end like this. Your fans are watching. They want to hear from you." Stapleton looked directly into the main camera for the first time since the confrontation began. "My fans know who I am. They know what I stand for. They know that I pour my heart and soul into every song I write and every show I play. They don't need a talk show host to tell them what kind of man I am." He turned back to Hudson. "And they certainly don't need to see me sit here and be disrespected by someone who thinks entertainment value is more important than human dignity. Chris, please." Hudson tried once more, but Stapleton was already reaching for the small microphone clipped to his shirt. "Jennifer, I came here to share my music with your audience. I came here to talk about art, about creativity, about the things that matter to me. Instead, I got a lecture from someone who doesn't know the first thing about my life, my struggles, or my values." He unclipped the microphone and set it gently on the small table between them. "I've been in this business for 20 years, and I've never walked out of an interview before. But I've also never been treated with such disrespect by someone who's supposed to be a colleague." Hudson stood up as well. "Chris, I never meant for it to go this way." "Maybe not," Stapleton said. "But intentions don't matter when the impact is this hurtful. You questioned my character, my faith, and my integrity, all because I wouldn't give you the political sound bites you wanted. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment. I have too much respect for myself, for my family, and for my fans to sit here and continue this charade," Stapleton said, taking a step toward the edge of the stage. "When you're ready to have a real conversation about music, about art, about the things that actually matter, you know where to find me." Hudson reached out her hand as if to stop him. "Chris, wait! Please don't do this." Stapleton paused at the edge of the stage and turned back one final time. His expression had shifted from anger to something deeper, something sadder. "Jennifer, I want you to understand something. When I write a song about heartbreak, it's because I've had my heart broken. When I write a song about loss, it's because I've lost people I love. When I write a song about hope, it's because I've had to find hope in the darkest places. That's what real art is, Stapleton continued. It's not about checking boxes or meeting expectations or saying what people want you to say. It's about truth. And the truth is, I don't owe anyone an explanation for how I choose to make a difference in this world. Hudson's eyes were beginning to well up with tears. Chris, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I appreciate that, Stapleton said, his voice softening slightly. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. Sorry doesn't take back the questioning of my faith, my character, my values. And sorry doesn't change the fact that you thought it was okay to ambush me on your show. He looked out at the stunned studio audience. To everyone watching, I want you to know that I respect your intelligence. I respect your ability to listen to my music and decide for yourselves what it means to you. I don't think you need me to tell you how to think or what to believe. Turning back to Hudson, Stapleton's expression was resolute. And that's the difference between us, Jennifer. You think your platform gives you the right to tell people how to think. I think mine gives me the opportunity to help people feel. Chris, please, Hudson said one more time, but Stapleton was already walking away. Good luck with your show, he called over his shoulder. I hope you find what you're looking for. The cameras followed him as he walked across the stage with dignity intact. The studio audience didn't know whether to applaud or sit in stunned silence. Most chose the latter. Hudson stood alone at center stage, looking completely lost. She finally managed to say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break." But Stapleton wasn't finished. Just as he reached the stage exit, he stopped and turned back one final time. You know what, Jennifer? There is one more thing I want to say. He walked back toward center stage. I've spent my entire career trying to write songs that bring people together, and I've done it without asking anyone what their politics are, what their religion is, or what causes they support. Because music, real music, doesn't care about any of that stuff. Music cares about the human heart. And if you can't understand that, if you can't respect that, then maybe you shouldn't be interviewing musicians. The silence that followed was absolute. My daddy used to tell me, Stapleton continued, his voice thick with emotion, that a man's character isn't measured by how loudly he speaks, but by how honestly he lives. I've tried to live honestly my whole life. I've tried to be true to my music, true to my family, and true to myself. He looked directly at Hudson. And I'm not going to let anyone, not even someone with their own television show, make me feel like that's not enough. With that, Chris Stapleton turned and walked off the stage. The studio audience sat in complete silence until someone started a slow clap that gradually built into sustained applause. Hudson remained on stage, visibly shaken as her producer finally managed to cut to commercial, but the damage was done. The confrontation was broadcast live, and within minutes, clips were already spreading across social media. This wasn't just a failed interview. This was a moment that would define both careers, a clash between two very different philosophies about art, responsibility, and authenticity that would be talked about for years to come.